Hello again, everyone. Going to be starting on a new vintage TV restoration today. And what you're seeing here is a 1948 Tele-Tone Model 149. Tele-Tone, they were like a lot of manufacturers, they were into radios. And I've actually seen a picture of a wood type radio from back in the 30s that had the Tele-Tone name on it. So I'm assuming that's the same company that made this TV. They were pretty active in electronics from the 30s until 1955, and they went bankrupt. That was the last year that they were in business. One interesting thing I found out about the Tele-Tone company, when CBS was trying to get the color TV system, the Tele-Tone CEO, he made the statement that if the CBS system was adopted, that his company, Tele-Tone, would begin production immediately of a color TV device for less than $100. I'm assuming that was to retrofit it onto a black and white TV. I'm sure that's what he meant. Probably some kind of a color wheel device, or don't know, never seen one. I don't think they ever made one, but that was a statement that he made. And as we know, RCA was their system was adopted as a color TV system. This set, it is a 7-inch electrostatic CRT 7JP4, like a lot of the sets in the late 40s used. The cabinet on this it's kind of unique with a step-up design. You see there in the middle, and then the front actually steps out where the CRT and the two sets of controls are in the center. That steps out from the sides, so kind of a neat looking design. Dual speaker cutouts. Now I'm sure there's only one speaker in the set, but that balanced it well. It looked like it had two speakers there in the front. It only has one, but still that was a pretty neat design. The knobs on this set are not what I've seen in pictures of this particular set. Let me show you a photo I found online that shows the original knobs and what they look like. So we may have to come up with something a little different as to the knobs. These inner knobs look pretty much correct, but the outer knobs, they don't look like this at all. So we may do something about that. I've got several old knobs laying around that we can go through, maybe find something that looks a little different and closer to what it should look like. So let's look at the cabinet here real close, and we'll point out some defects and things that we like about it. There's that step-up design I was talking about right in the center. And on the front, steps out. I'm sure this is veneer. I haven't looked at the inside, but most all of these were. But not in really bad shape, except for these two holes, and I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. But you know, the grill cloth still looks good on both sides, and the channel dial, number dial, yeah, it's wore where your fingers have hit it over the years, but maybe we can spruce that up and make it look a little better. There's a Tele-Tone's logo. Still looks good. And the decals on the controls is still in pretty good shape. Alright, these two holes on the top. When I bought this set, it had a magnifier attached to the top. And this one's still good. This holder. Now this one is broken off, so I can't really put it back down in there. But here's a magnifier that came with the set. What these did, pretty obvious. You put this in front of the screen and you could get a couple inches bigger image, maybe went from a 7 to maybe a 9, possibly a 10-inch viewing area. Alright, that gives you kind of an idea of how it's made. It does increase the size of the picture. Now, I don't know how clear it is when you're magnifying it like that, but back in the day when these sets were relatively new, that's about all you could do to get a bigger screen size was either buy a magnifier or buy another TV, and most folks didn't want to buy another TV. We'll probably reattach this magnifier. We've got to do some work on it, fix that screw that's stripped off and clean it up, of course. But by the holes being in the cabinet, rather than try to fill the holes, we'll probably just put the magnifier back. And there's a quick look at the chassis. I see tubes in every socket, hopefully, so even back in there behind the high voltage cage. So it should be an interesting restore. Yeah, it's a 7JP4 electrostatic CRT, like a lot of the sets I've restored have, but I'm sure this one will present some challenges that I haven't had before. That's kind of what makes it interesting. So I haven't checked the CRT. I have no idea if it's good or bad. When I bought this set, I did receive a new 7JP4 in the box. It came in the deal, so I've already tested it, and it is indeed a new CRT. But hopefully this one is okay. So first thing we'll do is check it, and then we'll go from there. Check the filaments on the tube, and that's pins 1 and 14. I have around 2 ohms, so we know the tube will at least light up. So to test this tube, I could hook up my Sencor CR70, but as I mentioned in the past, sometimes the tube will check good with the CRT tester, still not have a very good picture. So this is the best way. Just a spare chassis. I have a Motorola VT71, and I use this just to check 7JP4s. So I made me an extension where I can keep the chassis away from the back of the set, give me more working room. So let's hook this up and see what we get. Now you can see why this extension really makes it a lot easier. If this wasn't here, I would have to try to plug this into the base of the tube, and your chassis are right together when you do that. So we're hooked up. Let's plug it up and see what we get. And I see some tubes lighting up, so that confirms that the picture tube filaments are good on it. Well, I decided to take the chassis out of the cabinet. This picture tube is so dirty on the front, I didn't think I could tell much about it. That chassis has some vertical height problems, so we're not concerned about that. Just mainly looking at the brightness and the contrast. Let me put a little Windex on the paper towel and wipe the front of this tube off and see if it looks a little better. There we go. That's a little improvement. Let's try the focus. Yeah, pretty good focus. And I have the LED lights on here in the shop, so I say we got a pretty good tube there. Turn one of the lights off. Okay, get this unhooked and get the chassis put up. Always try to remember to say this when you're unplugging these tubes from the base of the CRT. I like to go from side to side like you see me doing here, and you don't put any pressure on that base because this one's a little loose. And here's a closer look at the really dirty chassis. All the tubes are there, or I should say there's tubes in every socket. Probably they're in the right socket, but sometimes that doesn't apply either. There's that CRT, we need to do some more cleaning around the edge there. And speaker's kind of interesting. Got a little cardboard sleeve around it. Let's pull this high voltage cover off and take a peek down in there. Yeah, that's your pretty typical high voltage section in an electrostatic tube. Here's the output tube. There's a rectifier tube and a transformer. Okay, let me tip it up and we'll look at the bottom, see what's going on under there. Well, kind of sparse, but that's the way these sets were. You got a pretty large metal chassis and the parts are scattered out, which makes it a lot easier to work on. Some typical paper caps here, there's one, there's one. Some up in here as well. There's an electrolytic, look like it's been changed. I don't think that was factory. And there's a can electrolytic right there at the bottom of it. Looks like it has one section unhooked, so that's probably what that was going to. Selenium rectifier. Definitely want to get that out of there. Now the high voltage caps on these sets. See these four right here. And them look like Sprague. Yeah, I can see Sprague on that one on the bottom. And they all four look oily, like they've been leaking out. Pretty simple design. Tuner has no shield on it. I don't think it ever had one on it. I had to look at the service literature to see, but I don't believe the way this is designed here in the front, I don't think you could put a shield on it. But hey, they worked. That's all that mattered. On-off switch seems to be clicking, and the controls are turning, so hopefully they're okay. We can work with that. There's a candome resistor right there, mounted on the chassis. A lot of room to work. That's the one drawback of the little Motorola, is a lot of parts in a small chassis and kind of jammed in there together, but you got plenty of room to work with this chassis. When I restore these sets, I've done them several different ways. A lot of times I'll just leave the dirt on, and if it's not really bad, won't check any tubes, just start with the power supply and see if we can get it up and running without checking the tubes or cleaning the chassis. But this one is so dirty, I think I'm going to pull all the tubes out. We'll test them while we have them out. We'll clean them off if they're okay. And I'm going to clean the top of this chassis off where it won't have dirt all over me when I get finished working on it at the end of the day. It's pretty filthy. See there? I'm going to pull the CRT out first. We'll put it in a safe place. Might even wipe it off before I put it in a safe place. The strap just loosens on this side. It should be out now. Yeah, the face of that tube cleaned up pretty well. We could do some more intense cleaning when we get to that point, but for right now we're going to stow this away over here. Good safe place. Sam's photo fact. So what I'm going to do is go to the tube layout. I can find it here real quick. And we'll compare as we take these tubes out, make sure they're in the right socket. So here's the top view of the tube layout. So I've flipped the chassis around to where it corresponds with this layout. And the first tube I pulled out should be a 6x5, and it is. And we got a 25Z6. And that's what it is. See a lot of RCA tubes in this set. So maybe they used RCA as a supplier for the tubes. Even the 7JP4, it's an RCA, so could be the original 7JP4 that came in the set. Let's pull a couple more out. Yeah, another RCA, 6AU6. Well, there's a Tele-Tone. So maybe it's just had a lot of work done to it and some tubes replaced. So I'm going to pull the rest of these out, and I'll let you know how many are Tele-Tone and how many are RCA or other brands. Well, I'm about to forget the tuner tubes. Several RCAs. We got a couple of tongue saw here and here. We got a Tele-Tone. We got 112SN7, and then I think this is a Tele-Tone. Yeah, 6AL5 and 6AU6. That's the only Tele-Tones. That's the only 3 Tele-Tones that I found so far. Sylvania. I think there was one more brand. Yeah, Raytheon. There's a Raytheon 6AU6. A lot of RCAs. Well, tuner tubes, we have an RCA, a Sylvania, and a Raytheon. So 5 or 6 different brands of tubes. But hey, we'll check them and see how they test. Well, that's a start. We got a lot of the dirt off. Still needs a good cleaning. Once we get the set going, I probably will do a little better job, but that'll keep most of the dirt off of me as I'm working on it. Tubes back in. The only tubes that really checked questionable was a couple of the 12SN7s, and I put a question mark on the side of them with a Sharpie. I think I put them back here in the vertical circuit. So we may need to change those, but all the other tubes really tested good. So I think that's going to be it for part 1 of the Model 149 Tele-Tone. In the next video, we'll begin to work on the chassis, see if we can get some voltages out of the power supply. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Hey, if you like this video, we have many more on our channel, so why not consider subscribing? We would really appreciate it. Thanks.